So, hello everyone. Med Students Network and Global Neurosciences Association proudly welcomes you to the fifth session in our International Career Symposium, Global Residency Roadmaps on Building a Good CV for Match and Perfecting Personal Statement. I am Amish Mazhari, the moderator for today's session, and I will now be sharing with you all a brief intro about MSN and GNA. Med Students Network is an international organization aiming to build a global community where medical students, interns, and doctors can learn, grow, and research together. We provide guidance about licensing exams like CLAB and USMLE and different residency pathways across the globe. We regularly organize the clinical case discussions, networking sessions, and workshops to help improve your CV, interview, and research skills. MSN provides its members with various opportunities to build their portfolio. Currently, we are looking for global ambassadors to represent their country while building their CV. Global ambassadors receive free MSN membership during their tenure, a certificate and letter of recommendation, and performance-based incentives such as priority on all MSN research projects and free entries to courses and conferences. More information about benefits and expectations of this role can be found in the application form. We also have a Teach Your Peers initiative where you can get an opportunity to present a clinical case or teach any topic of your choice with us. You will receive a certificate of teaching and feedback from the attendees that will build your portfolio for residency in countries like the US and UK. Just fill up the application form and a member of our team will contact you with further details and guidance. Med Students Network Research Collaborative is an initiative where we provide guidance and mentorship to help you publish a research paper in a PubMed index journal at no additional cost. From previous rounds of application, we have had 10 plus teams working on different papers on internal medicine and general surgery topics. Applications are open until 30th November 2023. Experience is appreciated but not required. Please note that the only applications from the MSN members will be considered. On our Instagram handle, you can find a FAQ guide containing full information and testimonials from our previous mentees as well. Moving on, Med Students Network proudly presents Mentor Match, an initiative to connect aspiring medicos with experienced mentors who can provide support in their pathway to residency in UK, USA, Australia, Germany, and Canada. MSN members can send in 5 to 15 queries at no additional cost every year. Our team will filter queries which meet the guidelines towards towards to the suitable mentors who will provide a response within 2 weeks. If you require extra guidance, we have a paid service as well, where will be connected to a mentor who will respond to all the queries within 72 hours. More information can be found in our FAQ guide. Alternatively, if you are willing to share your experiences for the benefit of others, become a mentor with us. Med Students Network presents a paid CV and personal statement review service suitable for those applying for residency in USA, NHS, non-training jobs in UK, NHS specialty training, residency positions, research, leadership positions, or clinical attachment, electives, observerships, externships in USA or UK. Slots are limited, so if you're selected, a mentor from MSN will contact you via email with further information. Med Students Network brings to you a four-part course, Ace Your Surgical Sutures and Knots by Dr. Parth Gada on 23rd to 26th November via Zoom. The course covers hand knots, Aberdeen knots, reader's knots, special laparoscopic knots, simple interrupted sutures, continuous and mattress sutures. Every attendee will have a chance to practice under Dr. Gada's one-to-one supervision. Each session of theory plus practical plus quiz. Certificates of participation and recording will be provided. Check out the full brochure for more information. Registrations end on 21st November 2023. We would like to introduce our co-organizers, Global Neurosciences Association. It is an international organization building a global community of students and doctors who are passionate about neurosciences. GNA regularly organizes webinars on residency pathways worldwide, as well as neurology and neurosurgery webinars. GNA has a global ambassador peer-to-peer presentation and research collaborative program as well, similar to that of MSN. I'll also explain about a new initiative at GNA, GNA Research Journal Club, a platform where individuals can discuss, appraise, and present scientific articles in the presence of experienced research mentors who will provide constructive criticism. Build your knowledge on hot topics in neurosciences and find inspiration for your own research topic. If you wish to present a paper, apply now via link in the bio. You can also attend the sessions passively to listen and learn. Do not miss this chance to practice and build your confidence for poster and oral presentations at conferences. Certificates will be provided to both attendees and presenters to help vouch for your strong interest in research. Two links have been shared in the chat box with all CV building opportunities offered by Emerson and GNA. Become a member with us and build your CV, knowledge, and skills with us. Our membership form is also in the chat box. Follow our Instagram handles for regular updates. I will now introduce our speakers for today's workshop, Dr. Rishi Chaudhary. Dr. Chaudhary is a PGY1 in combined internal medicine and pediatrics at Metro Health Case Western University, Cleveland, Ohio, USA. We thank him for taking out time for this mentorship session today. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat box and Dr. Chaudhary will answer them after this presentation. Also, do fill out the feedback form that will be shared at the end of the session to receive your certificate of attendance. Over to you now, Dr. Chaudhary. Thank you.
So, hi everybody. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are zooming in from. So I know we have this session on about your ERA CV and personal statement. So why don't we just start with knowing what everyone is expecting out of this session? Like, do you want to know what is a part of your CV or what is a part of your personal statement? Or you want to know things like how to write the CV, how to write the personal statement? So we can go according to that. If you guys want to unmute and speak up one by one about it, we can do that. Or you can put in your queries in the chat box and we can start according to that. Based on that, I can make the webinar in that way that we talk about whatever the majority of people want to do. Yeah, let's give everyone a couple of minutes. While I load my slides. Okay. So I see a lot of people are asking about how to go through the CV or how to build a CV rather than how to fill up the CV. I think because filling up the CV is more important when you're closer to the application. But when it comes to building up the CV, there are a few things which really make up your entire CV. So I kind of put it in that way. So first is your US clinical rotations, which comes in your work experience. Then you have your research experience, and the third thing is your volunteer experience. These are actually the three things that really make up your entire ERA CV. Obviously, we know that there are scores and everything else which you have to do, the scores and personal statement. But when it comes to your only the ERA CV or what you can fill up in the ERA CV, these are the three things you can do, which is your, like I said, electives, observerships, or externships. The second part is your research, and the third part is your volunteering activity. So these are the things which you can add. Additionally, as you guys are all aware, the ERA CV has changed from this year onwards. From 2023, they changed the ERA CV. Now you can put in just 10 experiences, which I'll just show you in a bit. That's how it's going to be there. Yeah, let me just open it. So this is something, I hope everyone can see my screen. This is how your ERA CV basically looks. Obviously, this is not the interactive version where you can keep filling in actively. This is a worksheet which ERA's released this year to discuss and let people know how the CV has to be filled up and how things have to be filled up. So this is how it really starts. You put in your basic account information over here. You put in your mailing addresses and stuff. You put in your work authorizations and visas and everything. All right. What is more important in the CV is, so yeah. So these are the things which you will always really get stuck up when you're filling up the CV, and I'll go it one by one. So the first thing is geographical preferences. This is something which started from 2021. So what happened is they have basically divided the entire United States into around 9 to 10 geographical areas, which include different parts of US. So the reason why they put this in is so that people can choose whichever geographical regions they want to go in. Personally, I feel that filling up geographical preferences really boosts up your chances of matching into a particular region. But right now, since we are still new into this and we do not have any data to back this, I think we'll probably be waiting for next year to see how important was geographical preference for programs in really choosing you for the residency interviews and for the residency programs. So that is something you guys will be facing when you fill up your applications. Whenever you do it, is choosing geographical preferences. You have to choose out of, let's just say, 10 geographical preferences, and you're expected to put in reasons. Obviously, reasons can be things like you've worked in that area, you have family in that area, or you generally like that area. The other thing which they expect you to fill is rural and urban preferences, which could be whatever you are comfortable with. Usually, whatever most of the people I know have filled up is generally a no preference, because people coming to the US from different parts of the world are willing to work in any place, be it rural or urban. No one really has so many specifications considering how competitive the match process is. Okay. Then coming to the part which everyone keeps talking about is your work experiences. Like I said, you can only fill up 10 work experiences compared to the ERA CVs in 2022 and before, where you could fill in as many work experiences as you could, which is basically your research, volunteer, and US clinical experience. So when this thing comes up, what I tell people or what everyone advises others is that you should try to fill in as much US clinical experience as possible. Then you can add some research experience, and then you can add some volunteer experience. All right. The reason is when you're filling this up, it's not just about filling up which place you did the rotation at or what you did in that rotation. It's more about uh, what was your role in that rotation. Now the ERA CV has become so comprehensive that they really want to know what you really did in the rotation, rather than just those basic things like you collected patient information, you talked to the patient, you took these cases and stuff like that. They need to know things like, so the primary focus area, basically it talks about what your work experience was, like in which area were you working. For example, if it was basic science, like were you tutoring or mentoring people in basic science. All right, then clinical and transitional science, which is where your US clinical experience kind of falls in. Then community involvement or community outreach. This basically covers up what you do in your volunteer activities, right? So if you have those rural camps which you do with your med schools, or you do those rural camps or vaccination camps with your community medicine programs in your med school, these are the things which could come in your volunteer experience. Same thing goes for customer service and healthcare administration. If you're helping up set up camps, those blood donation camps, rural eye care checkup camps and stuff like that, these are the things that come in this part. Okay, then coming to improving access to healthcare, something similar. Again, if you're going to rural areas, conducting health camps, health checkups, everything comes into this. Then we have medical education as another focus area, where people put in their experiences where they have been tutoring students or mentoring and stuff like that, be it for USMLE or any examination. Then, interestingly, the new era CV does not really have a section for hobbies separately until now. But what they have is basically a focus area in your experience part, which is titled as music, athletics, and art, where people really put in their experiences, like what do they want, like if they have done any musical training, or if they have hobbies in any kind of music system, or if they have hobbies in any like if they have any interest in any sports and stuff like that, they kind of use this part to put in as one of the experiences, right? So other things like promoting wellness, public health, social justice and advocacy, these are all things which could be a part of your volunteer experience, which basically comes to the second part, where I saw a lot of people were asking over here that what kind of volunteer experience is needed. So volunteer experience can really be anything. It can be something in India, it could be something in the US. If you ask me what I did a couple of volunteer experiences in India and a couple of volunteer experiences in US. So when it comes to volunteering in the US, for people who are on a visa and they're coming to the US to volunteer, it's kind of hard to get the volunteer positions, because you have to keep asking different places and see what they can allow on your visa, because obviously you can't get paid. So you can just do it as a part-time job, and they have to do some background checks and things like that. I worked at an LGBT pride clinic in Cleveland, and I was involved with them like 2 or 3 times in a week, where we used to do different counseling sessions, and we used to also take care of their basic health needs and things like that, which was one volunteer experience I did. Other volunteer experiences I know of which people did was organizing blood camps, or during COVID, they were doing COVID outreach camps, not just in India, but even in the US. They were also doing things like providing basic healthcare to the underserved and stuff like that. So that really covers up your volunteer experience. All right. Any questions about volunteer experience before I go to the next two categories? You guys can unmute, or you guys can just type out anything if you want, and then we'll keep going ahead.
Would you need a certificate to prove your volunteering experience?
Okay. So the thing is, nowhere in your USMLE CV or anywhere in your ERAS application, you need to put in certificates. But this kind of makes people feel that they can really put in whatever they want. But honestly, if you have really done something, you can talk about it forever, right? So like I told you, I was in the Pride clinic for like 3 days in a week. So I can talk about it forever, like because I actually worked there and I really know what was done there. But when it comes to documentation, they don't really expect you to have like certificate proofs and stuff like that. But one more thing which I want to tell everyone, which a lot of people don't really know is, and if they put in like random volunteer experiences or random work experiences in their CV and they think that they do not have to provide proof, once you match, once you are filling up your program documents and everything, they need proof for everything that is there on your CV, right? So they really want to know if you actually did a particular thing or not. That's when the issues come up. So that is why I always tell people, just put in what you have done. Try not to put in unnecessary things which you can't provide proof for, or which you have not really done, right? So that is the only thing this hardship comes in. Okay. Do we measure hours in of volunteering in India? So I think the hours and the setting, like it says over here, actually they don't really ask for hours, they just ask for participation frequency. Until 2022, I remember they used to ask about hours, like how many hours you've been working in that position. But now they have just limited this to like a one-time thing, daily thing, weekly, monthly, or quarterly, or annually kind of thing. So you don't really need to calculate hours or clock hours or anything in volunteer activities. It's all about how you are associated with it, what you want to do about it, and how do you think it can help you out in your CV. Also, one more thing, I personally feel you shouldn't really be doing a volunteer activity just to put it on your CV. I know some people, if they're short of time and they really want to get their application in, they talk about volunteering experience they did at the last moment, which might be for a couple of days. But personally, I feel if you're really doing a genuine volunteer experience, why not just do it in the best possible way and help out people if you're really focusing on that, because you can fill up your CV forever, but that satisfaction and happiness you get with a volunteer experience by helping out someone, that is going to be kind of different. Okay.
You
All
mentioned
right.
that they will require proof when you like in the when once you're accepted, right? But for a lot of volunteering things like camps and all, we don't really get any certificate or like proof.
Right.
So what do we do about that?
So if it's a one-time thing where you just went to a camp, because I'm assuming it was a one-time camp, if it was a recurring thing, then you might be involved with an organization and they can just write you a letter. It does not necessarily have to be a certificate. It can be a letter from your supervisor or from your head that you were involved in this position from this month to this month or this year to this year. That is more than sufficient. But if it's like a one-time camp or one-time thing, no one will really ask you for a proof, and I don't think that will really add sufficient value to your experience column over here too, right? So if you do just like a one-time blood donation camp, I don't think it will really add value to 1020 characters over here. So unless it's like a recurring activity, it's like a frequent activity, I mean, it will never make it to at least my CV or anyone I advise their CV. All right. Yeah, so I'll just be addressing the volunteer experiences right now, and then we'll move to the other part. So I see another question like, if you're applying to surgery, would you need surgery specific volunteer experience? Honestly, volunteer experience can be anything. No one, if you're applying for surgery, it does not mean you need to have surgery volunteer experience. If you're applying for like psych, it does not really mean you have to have psych volunteer experience. Obviously, if you have a volunteer experience which is in that specialty, it kind of puts in more talking points in the interviews, which is a discussion for another day. But to put it in your CV, to really talk about it and to add something to your CV, any volunteering experience where you have done a significant contribution really works, right? Any other questions? Do we have any other questions for the volunteer experience? All right. Okay, moving on to the next experience, which is something which people really talk about, and it's like the need of the hour, because since COVID, everything has been crazy about it, is your US clinical experience. So I like to put US clinical experience into three categories. One is your electives, one is observerships, and one is your externships. All right. So I know there are different sessions for giving a detailed overview of this, but I can give you a brief overview so that most of the questions are taken care of. So electives are something which people do before graduating. They are usually in universities or community hospitals or whatever hospitals. Basically, they have residents in place and you get to work like a final year or maybe like a final year med student of the US. In these electives, you can interact with patients, you can examine them, you can use you have your own EMR access and stuff like that. So you are basically a student training in the US healthcare system, which is probably the best possible kind of US clinical experience which you can have on your CV. So now the thing about electives is, so they are very limited. They are extremely expensive. They can be as high as $5,000, $6,000 for just 1 month of elective. And then they're hard to get because they're very limited, especially after COVID. A lot of electives have been switched to the VSLO criteria. So VSLO is something which the programs in the US have started using as a criteria to get the applications for electives, because it's more uniform for them and makes it easier for them. If you do a Google search on how to get your med school enrolled with VSLO, you can get the entire documentation and entire procedure online. It's straight up on Google. I don't have it right now, so I can't show it to you, but that's there. And if you have a lot of people in your med school who are going for USMLE, and if your med school is really willing to give the sponsorship every year, or you guys can combine together and pay for it every year, I would suggest joining VSLO would be a really good idea, because it really opens up your opportunities for electives. Because places like, I think, Mayo Clinic, and I'm not sure if Cleveland Clinic takes VSLO, but they might be. These places, they go for VSLO related electives. So you should like really try to get your med school into VSLO so that the elective part can be taken care of. If not, that does not mean you won't match without electives. I personally did not do a single elective. A lot of my friends did not do electives and they have successfully matched. The thing when you don't do electives is you are left with just two options, which is called observerships and externships. So observerships, again, after COVID have become really crazy and difficult to find, although they are pretty cheap. They are not as expensive as electives, but the problem is observerships are mainly you are just observing a physician or you're just shadowing a physician in a hospital which has a residency program. The pros of observerships is you get to interact with residents, you get to interact with attendings. Personally, when I was at an observership, I ended up publishing a case report too with one of my uh with one of my with one of my residents, the PGY1s that time. So that helped me cast an impression in the program despite being just an observer. I was pretty proactive. So that helped me ultimately match over there. That is these are the things which you can do in observerships, and the only like the sad part about observership is you cannot be involved in direct patient care. So that's the main thing about it. You can't really have your own epic access or the EMR access. You can't be involved in direct patient care, but you can still be involved in interactions, patient rounds and stuff like that. And I personally feel observerships really help you get to know the residents, get to know the program. And if you're able to cast an impression within that 2 weeks to 1 month observership you have, you definitely stand a chance of getting an interview at that place. Coming to also another thing about observerships is they can be paid or unpaid. Some are like as low as $200 to $1,400 a month. Some could be free. The main problem with observership is just finding out which places are giving observerships, because there are no clear-cut places which really give out observerships like that. I know a few places are there, like Cleveland Clinic. Not sure if Mayo Clinic still has observerships, but there are a couple of programs in Connecticut which do have observerships. So it's kind of variable, but yeah, people do manage to find observerships just by cold emailing programs and doing things like that, which is again a discussion for another day. Then the third part is your externships. So externships are mostly in private hospitals or private clinics through private agencies. They are also most of the times paid. Some externships could be unpaid if you know doctors in private practice, or you have family friends who are physicians in the US and they've their own private clinics and private setups, which really helps you out, save a lot on the costing and get you those externships. Externships are basically like hands-on experience for graduates. When I say hands-on experience for graduates, it's basically in a private setup where you can interact with patients and do whatever you could have done as an elective. Obviously, electives are much better because it's a hospital setup, and externships are just in private clinics or private hospital setups, which majority of the times don't really have uh, residents attached to them. All right. So this is something about your US clinical experience. You guys can keep on adding your questions while I go through it, and then we can talk about the next part, which would be the research.
Hello. I just wanted to ask something about sub-internships and research electives, and also at the like if you're doing your post-graduation, you're doing your residency in India. Are you still at the graduate level as a resident available for any observerships or externships or even clinical experience hands-on?
Okay, so two parts of this question. So the first part is if you're doing post graduation in India, you're not considered as a med student. You are considered as good as a graduate, because graduation anywhere in the US is considered from the year of graduation of your med school, not your post graduation or fellowship or anything anywhere in any part of the world. Okay, that just adds to your clinical or work experience, but your graduation is when you graduate out of your med school after the last day of your internship, right? So when you have graduated out of med school, the only options for you are externships and observerships, and that's all you would be able to get in. Could you repeat the first part of your question, Divyang?
Yeah, just for the benefit you just also talk about sub-internships and research electives?
Okay, so internships is actually kind of a complicated thing, which I personally tried to look into. It's basically something like electives, it's just named differently. Sub internships is more like a term which is used for the American students who are in the US healthcare system already, because they do sub internships. Sub internships are basically where they go as acting interns into different programs all over the US outside their main med school program. Okay, so like if someone is in Cleveland in Case Western University and they want to go somewhere to Michigan, like the Michigan University, and if they want to do an elective over there, that is probably going to be a sub internship and stuff like that. But as such, for international graduates, sub internships is something similar to electives. I'm not really sure if sub internships are still available because a lot of it changed after COVID. So it's kind of hard to get these things. There is actually one place called Larkin which gives something called a sub internship, which is, I think, basically an externship, because you're doing it after graduation. It's an inpatient externship. I'm not sure if you get to interact with residents and all, but there are a few people who actually did that. So I don't have experience with it, so I won't really be able to comment about it, but that's mostly for the graduate students. All right. Okay. So there are, yeah, go
I
ahead.
have a question.
Mhm.
Some hospitals don't accept if you're in, like, if you've crossed final year or something. So, like, if we are interns also, can we still go for electives?
Yeah, I think for the most part of it, majority of the people in India, at least, they go for electives in internship or extending their after extending their internship. I still have to hear about people if they've gone in the third year or final year. I know a few people from AIMS who've gone in third year for research electives and stuff, but I don't think any med school in India allows people to go out in the final year unless they are willing to do that. But yeah, most of the cases, people do their electives during the internship year. And just to clear the terms, so as long as you do not complete your internship, you are considered like a med student in the US. And internship is basically internship in India is basically referred to as the final year of med school. So in India, you call final year as your fourth year, but in the US, even if you are an intern or your final year, you're considered like a final year med student. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Just one more question. So, if like before pre-residency, if I had LORs from my USCE or research experience, would I still use it? Like if residency, I want to go again for the match, or would they be like old and then unvalid? So, do I contact my mentors or guides and ask for a fresh LOR?
Okay, so there are a few things about this. So what I have read and what I've heard from people is they usually say that if your LORs are between 1.5 years, I think maximum till 2 years, they are good enough to show a positive impact about you. But anything beyond that kind of gets tricky, because obviously imagine if you work with someone 3 years ago and now you're submitting that LOR, do you think that LOR would really give your current state or current scenario? No. So that's the logical part of it we used to think. And I ensured that whatever LORs I had, they were within 1 year of my application date. So like if I was applying in September 2022, my LORs had to be between Jan of 2022 to September of 2020, Jan of 2021 to September of 2022. So that was how I planned it out. Also, another thing about the LORs is, so some attendings, if you have worked with them in the past and they are willing to give you a new LOR for the future, like if they're willing to update the dates on your LOR and ready to help you out, you can definitely reach out to them and ask them if they can do that for you, because that really saves you the hassle of doing additional US clinical experience and kind of gets you a new LOR which works for you. Most of the time they do it, I feel, because it's just about editing a date and re-uploading the same LOR. But sometimes they might be not willing to do that because they feel that you did the experience 3 years back and they can't vouch for you anymore. So things like that. So it's a kind of complicated thing. Totally depends on the attendings you worked with and how much they are willing to go ahead for you, right?
Hello.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Disha.
I was wondering whether you know any research electives in USA or any other country which we can apply to in our mid school.
Mm-hmm. I think the research elective which I'm aware of is at John Hopkins. I'm not sure if Howard has a research elective. I know someone who did a research elective at Howard, but I'm not sure if it was before graduation or after graduation. You can just check their website. Another good thing is, I think John Hopkins has a well dedicated research elective website where they have this elective for, I think, $6,000 for a month or something. But still, I never looked into it because I was never sure that I would be able to spend that much. But if you have that opportunity and if you're still in med school, you can definitely check that out. Few things, whenever you have doubts like this, you should always just, like I told you about the John Hopkins elective, just go to their website. You'll always find an email ID attached over there. Just write to them and ask them about it, and they'll be more than willing to help you out. Okay. But yeah, these are the two electives which I'm really aware of in the US. But as far as other countries are concerned, I'm not really sure about it because I never really looked at other countries.
Thank you. I just had one last question.
Sure, go ahead.
Do research electives do research internships weigh just as much as research electives?
Okay, I am not really sure what are research internships. Are you talking about the research years which people do after graduation at Mayo and like Cleveland or Yale and stuff like that?
No, research internships are usually used by engineering students, but they're also available for medical students. They happen in summer of a particular year, and you have to apply a year before if you want to get into a particular year. And they basically they range from 6 weeks to 12 weeks, and they happen in a different country or as country or the country you're living in.
Okay. So I'm not really sure how these research internships work, honestly, because the only kind of research which I know for US is either something which you're doing in a group of friends, which are the normal research papers you're publishing, be it systematic reviews, case reports, or meta-analysis and stuff like that. The other kind of research which I know, like I mentioned, is the research electives, like at John Hopkins, Howard. I'm not sure about Mayo. And then the third kind of research which a lot of people have been doing since post COVID is the research years, where they work in an unpaid research position for at least 6 months to 1 year in Mayo, Cleveland Clinic, and things like that. The way they apply for this is by just going to the website, looking at the PIs, the preceptors they want to work with, writing emails to them, and seeing if they're happy to work with them. So these are the only three ways I know about the research. Research internships, like you say, sound something similar to an elective, but maybe for a longer duration, like 6 weeks to 12 weeks, as you mentioned. The main goal about any kind of experience you do, be it research, volunteer, or US clinical experience, is to see if it adds to your CV or not. So if you're doing a research elective or research internship for 6 to 12 weeks and you're able to do considerable amount of work in it, be it publishing papers or learning a lot of things, and which you can write it on your CV, that definitely counts as an experience. And there is no correct measure to really weigh how that will stand against a research elective or a research observership and stuff like that.
If we go for a research exchange in
Mhm.
like a third year medical school from India to any other country apart from US, and like because it's an exchange program, we go there, we are under the guidance of the professor of a particular university, and we do the research, complete it, and come back after a month. How much is valuable, and like is that counted as an
Okay.
experience or anything?
Yep. So this basically comes to the question which a lot of people ask is any research outside the US valuable? Honestly, I feel that any kind of research you do, be it in India, be it in UK or Germany or any country in the world other than the US, if it's a useful research, if it's something you've really worked on, and if it's adding some value to the research world, it's definitely going to be valuable. It's not necessary that you have to do research in the US, like you have to come to the US, you have to publish papers in the US. No, that's not necessary. What is necessary is if you have some kind of research, it should really be like worth your time, money, and like worth your CV. That's all. So you can do any kind of research. It all comes down to how much time you have, how much money you can put in, and how much you're willing to put in for that particular position. All right.
I have
Thank you.
2 questions. One,
Sure.
what is the minimum number of USC rotations and research experiences that are required? And second question is, what is the value of Indian LORs and Indian shadowing of, like, for example, a neurosurgeon or something? How much is that valid?
Okay. Yeah. So this, so I'll put this in parts. So first, the number of experiences you want to put in. So earlier, until 2022, we had no limit on experiences. People used to go crazy, like put in 10 US experiences, 10 volunteer experiences, 10 research experiences. Now it's not possible. Now you just have 10 slots. That is, you can see over here on my screen, entry 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are just 10 entries. So you can put limited number of experiences on your CV. So even if you go and do 100 experience, you can just put in 10, whatever you may try to do. Okay. So now choosing between these 10 experiences, obviously any mentor would have different views about it. Everyone has their own views, but I personally feel like if you have 10 columns on your CV, you obviously should put in more US clinical experience. Then you can put in research and volunteer experience, however you have it. So I have always been in favor of anything between at least 3 to 6 months of US clinical experience. There is no hard number. But what I know of is most of the people who are applying to the US residency programs, they try to do at least 3 US clinical experiences, which could be maybe an elective, observership, externship. Obviously, you guys must have heard stories of people who have matched without electives. I personally have a couple of friends who matched without doing any kind of US clinical experience. They had very good scores, they had strong alumni connections. But I think that was a story more for the COVID times. Now, as we are getting out of COVID and everyone is doing everything possible to get into US residency, I personally feel having a complete CV is more important than just taking a shot at it. Like, let's take a hit at it and see, I have $4,000 to spare. Let me just apply to these programs and see, I might get lucky and match. You might match, you might put up a YouTube channel, you might put up stories later on saying that you match without US clinical experience. But will everyone match like that? I personally feel no, because the match process is pretty variable. I know personally people with 260 scores who had just 1 US clinical experience and still have no interview despite having double 260s. So it can happen anyway. There are people with 6 months of US clinical experience who have pretty low scores, but they did manage to make good connections during the 6 months of US clinical experience. So they are able to get at least a couple of interviews from that. So that is what it is, kind of a subjective thing. But if you want to ask me if you have to split those 10 experiences, my thing would be at least 4 to 5 would be the US clinical experience. One could be your internship or hobby. That leaves you with around 3 to 4 more experiences, which could be split up between research and volunteer experiences. Any number, no specific number like that. All right. You can repeat the other part of your
Just one
Veena.
last thing.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead, whoever wants to talk.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask, like, as regarding research experience, so you talked about third-party country research experience. How about research experience in India? And how useful are the LORs from an Indian research experience perspective?
Got it.
That was
All right.
the second part of the question.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Veena. And thank you, Divyang. So the Indian LOR thing is also a kind of a subjective thing. Sadly, I think you've heard me say this 100 of times, that everything is subjective, because that is how the entire nature of a USMLE journey is. But whatever I'm telling is based on my personal experiences or what I've heard from my mentors and guides. When it comes to the LORs from Indian professors and attendings, what certain people told me was, if it's from a well-known person in India or if it's from a well-known med school, definitely go ahead and use that. It adds value. But if not, then obviously prefer the one in US or anywhere else you did. So coming to the other part, so there's an option to put in just 4 LORs in your entire application. You might be able to upload more than 100 LORs, but you can use just 4 for a particular program. Like if you're applying to, let's just say, Metro Health, you can use 4 over there. If you're applying to Upstate or Downstate, you can use just 4. It could be 4 different, it could be the 4 similar ones, but it's only going to be 4 in count. All right. So how people divide it is when you go to the program websites and when you look at the websites, some programs specifically say that we need a home country LOR. That's when you can put in either a research LOR from your home country or maybe a work LOR from your home country if you are from a well-known program in India. And the other 3 could be from US. Okay. So also in the US, a lot of people have different experiences. So suppose when I was working in Michigan, I got 2 LORs from there, and I had 2 LORs from Cleveland and 1 from Chicago, for example. So when I applied to the programs in Michigan, I use more LORs from Michigan. Like I use the 2 LORs from Michigan, and I use 1 LOR from Chicago, and I use 1 LOR from Cleveland. Okay. Then when I applied in Cleveland, I used 2 LORs for Cleveland and one from Michigan and 1 from Chicago and things like that. I kept on wearing it like that. So I did not use a single LOR from my home country because I don't come from a very well-known med school back in India. So I felt that it won't really add any value to my CV or or my ERAS application in any way. So that was my take on it. But if you're from a well-known program and if you have a lot of alumni in the US and if you have seniors from your med school who have already matched in a particular program and you have got good LORs from the med school you were in or from the home country place you were working in, definitely go ahead and use that. But otherwise, I think the highest value anyone would ever give is to a US LOR, because come on, like think of it. If you are giving, if you're getting a recommendation from someone who has been practicing in the US for so long versus someone in some other country, obviously the one from the US is probably going to have more value than the one back in the home country. Okay. Another part to this. So there are some people who might have worked for 3 or 4 years in a particular position in let's just say India. Maybe like you were doing post-graduation and you have had a significant amount of experience with a particular attending in India. And then you have just 3 or 4 months of experience with different attendings in different parts of the US. So in that scenario, I would also give higher preference to the Indian LOR where you have been working for 3 years, because that LOR is probably going to talk about you in a higher manner because that person has been directly connected and related to you for like more than 3 years. So that would give a better idea of your entire personality, your application and your capabilities compared to maybe just one random LOR which you did in Chicago or New York and stuff like that. Okay. So it's all about picking and choosing. Everything depends on how you fix up your application, what specialty you're applying to, and where you're going from there. All right.
Just a follow-up question.
Mhm.
When you said home country LOR, does it necessarily have to be from our medical school, or it can be any other place we have, like, let's say, shadowed a surgeon or a doctor?
It can be from any other place. It's all about what the content of the LOR is versus where the LOR is coming from when it is coming from outside the US. All right. A lot of it depends on a content of the LOR. So if there is a very generic LOR you're getting, let's just say from your experience in UK, but the experience in India talks really well about your personality and stuff like that, obviously you're going to go for the one with the one in India, which talks better about you than the one in UK, right?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we basically covered like the 3 aspects of the things that can come in your CV. Okay. Anyone has any other doubts related to research, electives, or the other volunteering thing? Obviously, you're having a separate thing for okay, yeah. I see another one. Like, would you give the same amount of significance to an LOR of a US physician, even if it's from a clinic? So, like I said, if it's a pretty generic LOR, I would probably skip on it. If it's an LOR which is really talking about you and you work there, versus an LOR from some random place in India where you were just shadowing a random neurosurgeon or random OB-GYN attending, I would definitely go with the one for the clinic in the US versus the clinic in India. So when it comes to organizations for volunteering opportunities, especially in India, there are so many organizations. I know there is Red Cross, then you have CRY, then you have other small organizations which keep doing these random rural camps. They do different camps all across the country. So you have multiple options, and it actually varies from state to state. I was from Delhi, and we had a lot of places which did work. I remember Red Cross Society. Then we have one more for the Pride clinics. I forget. I think that's called Humsuffer or something. The Humsuffer Trust and things like that. Then yeah, these are the ones which I have at the back of my head. But I think if you do a quick Google search, you might get a very comprehensive answer.
If you don't mind me asking, could you talk about your research experience? Like, did you publish a paper? Was it a case report? Could you talk about it if it's okay?
Yeah, sure. So personally, I was someone who was not really big on research. I just wanted to have my US experience taken care of, and I wanted to like do some volunteer work, but I was not a big person on research. I did try to put my hand in a good number of projects. So by my application season, I had like 3 case reports which I managed to publish, out of which 2 were already there on PubMed. And one was under submission. So this was what I did. Then I had a couple of oral presentations in my med school, which were basically things which I did at the conferences we had at the med school level. So these were like the 5 experiences I had. Then I had a separate work experience where I was working on 2 systematic reviews, which obviously did not come to any conclusion before the math season. So that is something I put as my work experience, where I just put in, let's just say in this entry 6, I was working with an Indian attending. And what were my roles? My roles were data collection, data analysis, and doing the statistical analysis and stuff like that. So this is all I did. I was not really big on research. Like I did not do research years in Mayo or research electives in John Hopkins and stuff like that, because part one, I felt that was too much money for me to go into. And part two, I was not really keen on doing that much research, which is different from right now. Right now in residency, I feel like doing a lot of research. I have a good number of opportunities for myself, and I'm trying to work on them. So yeah, you keep changing with time and money also. So that's all it matters.
So you do say that it has to be published, basically.
Ideally, yeah, if you're doing a case report, which is probably the simplest thing to publish, I would say at least before your application season, try to get it published rather than just having it submitted to a journal. And try to really work on case reports on your own rather than just combining with people, because I've seen a lot of WhatsApp messages going on where people are like, we need a 5th or 6th author, which is basically need money for contribution to publish that article. Just stay away from these things, because if they ask you in your interview that what was there in that case report or what was there in that research article and you have no clue about it, you probably will get caught.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I see someone's asking about step 1 score. So I think it's been already 2 years since Jan 21. There is no step 1 score anymore. It's just pass or fail. I get what you're getting to, that electives needed step 1 scores before some electives did, but now it's just a hit and miss. They go with the pass fail thing. If you have passed it, if you have a decent CV, they just call you, and they might not even call you even if you have a decent CV and you have passed in your first attempt. Okay. Yeah, when it comes to competitive branches like surgery or maybe orthopedics or neurosurgery, I think electives, observerships, and externships won't really make the cut into it. You definitely need to do some research experience. And personally, I know people who have done at least 2 to 3 years of research experience to really get into these specialties. So again, it comes down to how much you can get, how much you really want to do it, and how dedicated are you towards it. Because just to make you sure about it, so research years and research fellowships and stuff like that, at least for 6 months to 1 year, they're going to be unpaid. So if you're someone who can afford the lifestyle in US at least for 6 months to 1 year without any pay, then you should definitely consider it. If not, then I think it's not the best option for you.
Unlike electives, is it compulsory for research to also be in US, or is it okay if it's done in a home country?
Like I think I mentioned this before too. So research is more about what kind of quality it is rather than where it is done. That is my personal perspective. But yeah, if you're doing research in Mayo versus a random case report which you publish in some private medical college or any medical college in India, obviously the research in Mayo is going to stand above the one case report which you did. So that's how the criteria change. It totally depends on how these things get weighed on. Obviously, there is no right or wrong answer to this. I did just one case report in US, and two were like just random case reports with a group of people I met online, and we found a case and we worked on it. So that is how we did it. But yeah. Okay, I saw a
Hi,
couple
I
of
just wanted to ask now.
yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to ask now that with the advent of telemedicine, how useful could that be for volunteering or experience? Like if you're talking about doing telemedicine in underserved areas.
Yeah, I had something similar during my time. I was involved in this telehealth thing for COVID, where we were triaging people online, like via phone calls and talking to them about the symptoms and stuff. So I just put that experience. I think it's still valid. Like if you're asking me how valuable it is, depends on the person interviewing you. If they like it, they'll be like, oh wow, go ahead and tell me about it. If they don't really care about it, it's obviously just going to be another part of your CV. So again, a subjective part. But yeah, if you have it and if you want to talk about it, if you think it adds value, go ahead and put it in because it's a good experience. And telemedicine is something which what when I was talking about telemedicine, it's something which we are talking about your volunteer experience in India. I am not really talking about the tele-rotations. Tele-rotation was something which came up during COVID. Now, personally, I feel that they're just a waste of time because you can travel visa, although getting visas is still difficult, but it's still more convenient compared to what was there during COVID. All right. Okay. I don't think there are telemedicine experiences available in the US, especially if you're not citizens over here. I'm not sure about it. You can check out LinkedIn and see if they have any opportunities, but I don't really know about it. All right. Any other questions related to the CV? Then we can do a quick discussion on the person statement, unless we have any further questions about this. Yeah.
Yes. Has the step 2 CK score replaced the step 1 score in terms of what programs are looking at
I
for
mean,
applicants?
yeah, like now we don't have step 1 scores for most of the applicants. So I think it's just about the step 2 score. So there's no point about talking about any step 1 scores anymore. Obviously, if you have it on your CV, it just shows up, but whether they value it or not more than the step 2 score. So yeah, step 2 is like the main thing now. Okay. Yeah, I am getting some direct messages. Okay, how you guys can unmute yourself if your questions are not answered, and you can ask it over here. No one is going to judge you or talk about it. Okay. So, how to explain breaks in internship you take for step preparation? Honestly, if it's a break within, let's just say, 6 months of your internship and stuff like that, it can very well go unnoticed. But yeah, if it's a break for like 2 years or 3 years, which I have heard of people doing it previously because there was no NMC rule which put a binding on your on your internship extension. I feel that would be a big problem, but maybe 6 months to 8 months is not an issue. Okay. At what point during your elective do you ask for an LOR and when do you receive it? So it's kind of variable. What I usually suggested my mentees was just try to ask for an LOR somewhere in the third week, in the mid of third week. Like you can just go to the attending and be like, just ask them for feedback and let them know that you're really willing to get their a letter of recommendation from them, which would add value to your CV. Then you apply. and most of the times they're willing to do it. Sometimes like it's like 1 out of 10 where they might be like, no, we don't want to give you LORs, but we can help you out in any other ways. So it is what it is. But for majority of the times, most of them do give the LORs. And this works fine even if you're applying maybe a year later after your elective. Just make sure you try to maintain that contact or keep in touch with them once in a while, and carry that relation or contact with them so that they actually remember you. What I have suggested to some of my mentees was, so suppose I had a mentee who was taking their step 1 and just finished their elective at a certain place. Once they finished their elective, they came back to India, and then they were like, would my attending forget me? So I told them, just sit down and prepare for your step 1. Once you're done with step 1, just drop him an email and tell him that you're done with step 1. So you give him that update and you maintain that contact with them, and they really remember you that way. And I think that really goes out well in the future. All right. Okay. So I see another thing like, can we do electives before step 1, like the paid electives? So with Brooklyn, so yeah, these electives through various agencies are not really electives. They're basically externships. They're marketed as electives because obviously that's how you market things. But these are paid opportunities in private clinics for the majority of times. Some might say that it's an outpatient experience with 2 days in the hospital and stuff like that. I don't know if that works, because when I did mine during COVID, most of them were like out of hospital experience. The only thing that really mattered to the was related to the hospital was the attending, that he had affiliation with that hospital, and the LOR head was based on that hospital letterhead. That is what we know of. Of course, we never saw the LOR, so I don't really know if the LOR was really of that letterhead or not. But yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, so same thing for the observerships. Like I mentioned, observerships are basically something which is a passive experience, unfortunately. So the way you can take care of this is, when you're in an observership, try to interact with the residents, try to be involved in the discussions for patient care. Go ahead and tell them whatever you think about it, or whatever queries you have. No one is going to judge you. Obviously, don't talk back or argue and stuff like that. Don't try to answer over anyone, but just be part of the discussions. Other things you can do, which I remember when I was an observer, my attending made me do was, so suppose we had an interesting case, or we had something as simple as management of hyponatremia. So he just asked me to make a quick PowerPoint presentation on management of hyponatremia and presented the next day. That's what I did. And he wanted me to do a couple of these short presentations, not like fancy PowerPoint presentation, just short presentations where I could talk for like a couple of minutes or maybe 10 minutes and discuss management and treatments for various things like hyperkalemia, hyponatremia, and stuff like that. And so that he could add value to these things in my LOR and make it even more valuable. Other things you can do is, you always come across interesting cases. Like I had come across this interesting case of stercoral colitis when I was doing an observership here, and I ended up working with the resident. I just asked the resident if he was willing to take some help of mine and get it published. So he let me do whatever I wanted and help me out publish it, and that's how we managed to publish a PubMed article, like a case report in it. So yeah, these are the ways you can really stand out in observerships. Although, like everyone says, it's a passive experience, you can still make a lot out of it. The goal of these rotations is just to make sure people remember you, they value you, and they can eventually vouch for you. Because right now it's all about who can really vouch and put in a good word for you versus, oh, I just have to do this for the CV. All right. Anything else? It's not impossible to match into surgery and stuff like that. There are people who have matched into surgery, obviously, but yeah, more competitive the specialty, more uphill the task is, and things like that. Yeah. Also, one more thing, since I just saw this question, there is no particular order in which you put these experiences. You can put it in any order possible. What I think most people have done, at least in this year, is they've tried to put it in a chronological order, like how they were timing it and things like that. But you can put it in any random order. You can start with all your clinical experiences, then volunteer, then research, and go according to that. Doesn't really matter.
Hi, this is Divyang here again. Sorry, I got disconnected in between. I wanted to ask, like, we're talking about the ERA CV, but what about like if you're applying for other positions? What about the like a shorter amended CV or a resume rather? So, what is the like the order that you should have for like an like a concise resume, so to speak?
Okay, so I don't think I can open mine right now, but I remember when I was applying for like electives and stuff. So I again put in a brief CV. Let me see if I can pull it out on my phone. But yeah, I think the main categories in it was I put my basic demographic information on the top. Then I put in my basic details where I graduated from and where did I do my med school. Just one line about it that I graduated in this year. Then the second part was my work experience in India where I was working, and then my internship experience. And then I put in if I had any research or volunteer experience, I put like a separate heading like research experience, volunteer experience. And in the research experience, I see a lot of people do those CME courses and stuff online, which you can definitely put in. Obviously, I don't know if they really value that much. It just adds some weight to your CV, but not as valuable. So these are the headings you can really divide it into and just go about it.
Yeah, just as a further thing regarding the same question, how important like is the brief personal statement or your objective in that resume? So is I mean, or you can just just give in under the organizational headings that you said.
So like I didn't put any personal statements or anything in my CV. My CV was as simple as putting in some work experience. I am trying to see if I can pull out something. But yeah, I did not really put a personal statement as such. I put in just like a separate personal statement if they really ask for it. But as such, I did not put any personal statements, strengths, objectives. I think that comes out on those CV maker things. I don't remember the name. They kind of have it. I think Canva does give you a small column for putting in your objectives and stuff, which I really did not put in. Yeah, I don't think I can find my original CV. This might be the one. So yeah, this is how I put it. I put my education over here. I put in my certificates, licensure, whatever I was done with that time. This obviously wasn't there. This was a recent thing. Then I put in my work experience wherever I was working. Obviously, this is a lot more experience because this was my final CV when I was sending for my last couple of rotations. And then I put in my research experience. I'm kind of rushing through it because I don't want it to be there too much. Then this is research publications I put in. Then I put in presentations and seminars and my workshops, some extracurricular activities and hobbies. That's all I put in. It was as simple as that. Obviously, you might have seen that these explanations were pretty big when it comes over here, but this is something which I added in the end when I had finished my ERA CV and when I was still trying to get in a short with some of the electives, with some of the observerships, but you don't really need to put those details as such. It could be simple one-liners and as simple as that. You don't need to put in those details.
So can workshops and CMEs be added as a part of the 10 work experiences? Like if you've done it in a really prominent institution like NIMHANS or such.
Yeah, so they can be added to your general CV, but in your ERA CV, I think if you want to really put in and if you were involved completely with an organization, it's probably going to be just one entry in your entire CV. There is no separate column which says workshop, CME and stuff like that. There is no particular way to put it in. And what some people do is if they have done just one workshop or stuff like that, they just put it in the award section. I don't know where is the award section, but yeah, they just put it in the award section somewhere, and that's how it is.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think we are running out of time. This should be it for the CV. Do you want to discuss anything else about the CV? The organizers can let me know. Or we can do a quick 10-minute discussion on personal statement. We probably need another session for personal statement, I feel, because we talked more than enough about the CV. Okay. All right, so we can quickly go to the personal statement part. So I think what personal statement basically tells you is it. I obviously won't go over any samples right now because we are short of time. So the personal statement really tells you is basically it gives you an opportunity to tell why you were involved in medicine or what is your passion about, what brought you really into medicine, and why do you really want to practice in the United States. Okay, you can always put in important milestones and stuff like that, and like the word says, personal, it should be something which is really personal to you and you really wish to put that out to people rather than things which I'll go in the subsequent slide. Yeah, so this is what my approach was when you are really talking about a personal statement. I use something called the paragraph approach. I try to split my personal statement in like 3 to 4 paragraphs, I think 4 to 5 paragraphs, if I remember correctly. And this is how I started off. Obviously, everyone can have different starts, but this is something which really helped keep my thoughts together. And I felt it worked very well for a lot of people who I mentored, at least in the last 3 4 months. They've been getting pretty good interviews and stuff. So this is how I kind of framed it. So I put it as what brought you to med school. So the first paragraph could talk about what really inspired you to go to med school. Like people can obviously, I think the majority of people I know, they talk about someone in their family falling sick, which inspired them to be a doctor, which I think is now a very generic thing. And I have told everyone to just avoid it. People can have such interesting starts, and you just have to think about it. So I remember I helped someone in their personal statement think about using their passion for cooking as passion into medical school, like how they found that cooking was a mix of various ingredients and how you have to intricately mix up everything and come to a final conclusion, which is something they saw in medicine, and that is why they went into internal medicine, where they saw an entire team working together to come to a final conclusion, stuff like that. Then I think there was someone who talked about how they were involved in sports, how they like the team-based activities in sports, and how that really inspired them to go into a team-based practice, in which is basically seen in medicine. They wanted to be a part of a team where they work together to reach the end goal, things like that. Which basically covers your point 1 and 2 over here, which is what brought you to med school and what got you interested into the specialty. Then the next paragraph, which a lot of also other things you can add over here is like I've seen some people in the first 2 paragraphs when they talk about their interest, they also talk about certain cases which really stuck to them. Obviously, it's not possible that you will have just one case in internal medicine, like one case of chest pain which made you go to become a cardiologist, or one case of a GI bleed which was complicated, which made you become a gastroenterologist in the future. But what people try to do is highlight something about a particular case and how that case worked upon. Obviously, it does not have to be something really challenging like some random disease which no one has ever heard of. It could be something as simple as how hyponatremia was managed and how you liked everyone was working, or how someone was in alcohol withdrawal and how you really liked how the entire team came together and worked on it and tried to provide resources not only for his withdrawal but also to ensure that he does not go drinking in the future, and provide various social work related stuff, like things like that. So this is how you basically talk about something in your second paragraph, like any interesting case or anything about the specialty which really you drove towards it. This covers your first 2 paragraphs. Then the third paragraph, which I felt and which I made people talk about, is what made them really go to the US, or why did they really want to train in the US? What was something about the US healthcare system which really stuck to them? Over here, people can talk about how they were initially working, let's just say, in India, but when they came for their electives over here, they liked how the evidence-based and multidisciplinary management was going on, how things were based on guidelines, and how they were formulating guidelines based on research-based practices, which really stuck to them, and which is why they wanted to train in the US, like train with the best and stuff like that. So this kind of covers your third paragraph. Then the fourth paragraph was something like any special achievements you want to talk about. Like I was very proud of the volunteering experience I did. Like if I remember correctly, I talked about my COVID volunteering experience, how I was working with I don't know if people know that during COVID, a lot of gurdwaras had opened up and were providing basic healthcare and stuff like that. So I was involved with a couple, with one of them. So I went ahead and talked about it, which became a talk subject in one of my interview, that they really asked about what was this all about and stuff like that. So that is something I talked about. Some people talk about the research, like if you're doing 1 year of thorough research and maybe Mayo, or you have done very significant amount of research and gone ahead and published it or presented it at an international conference and you're really proud of it, you can talk about it. It can be any achievement. It does not really have to be whatever I'm saying, but these are the things which really stick to your head and you can put in and frame your personal statement like that. And then the last paragraph is something where you can talk about your qualities and a concluding statement like what are your qualities, or what is something good about yourself you want to put in, and a concluding statement that you would probably be an asset to the particular program and things like that. A trick which I always use for qualities was something in your ERA CV. Okay, so you see these things, these key characteristics. There are around, I think, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, around 9 or 10 key characteristics. I think one more was added in the final copy of CV, but this is just the worksheet I have. So around 10 to 12 qualities are there, and these are basically the qualities which you can literally use anywhere in your personal statement. Obviously you don't have to use all 12, just try to use 1 or 2 of them. These are the qualities which you can use in all your answers in your interviews. These are the qualities which can be used in your LORs and stuff. So I think this is like the best way. You don't really have to go anywhere looking for qualities. You don't have to go asking people what qualities you have to put in. So these are the things which you can put in your personal statement as a concluding paragraph. And I think it's as simple as that. This is what you do for a personal statement. You don't have to go crazy writing fancy English. You don't have to go around paying thousands of dollars to professional writers and stuff like that to write your personal statement. It's as simple. Your thoughts, you frame those thoughts, you come to a proper conclusion, and you try to, the only thing that has to be there is there has to be some continuity in your personal statement, which is what people really look for. Okay. So these are some questions which I really used and which I think whoever I worked with to edit or work on their personal statements, I gave them these questions to really look into it and come up with drafts so that we could work on them together. So these are the questions as follows. So what really drew you into medicine? Was there any meaningful experience or significant experience that had an impact on you? And if yes, then why was it meaningful? Then when did you decide you wanted to pursue a particular specialty, or what really attracted you towards it? Then this is the question which we were just talking about. What are the greatest qualities you have demonstrated and you have had, and when have you got an opportunity to demonstrate them? Okay. And where do you want to see yourself if you want to put this? And what is an important part of your quality of your personality which is not on your CV? Or if you want to talk about your role models and stuff, you can go ahead and talk about it. Or like I told you in the 4th paragraph, you can talk about your accomplishments or what are you most enlightened or delighted about and stuff like that. Okay. These are the do's and don'ts which I have, which is probably the last thing we'll be talking about. So the do's for a personal statement is you describe your passion, your commitment and patient to medicine and patient care. The CV and transcripts are already there, and you don't really need to go ahead and talk about it in your personal statement. Like I have seen people talk about, I was the topper of my med school in my final year. Like, come on, that does not really add any value to your personal statement. It's already there on your CV and no one really gives a shit about it. Okay, so these are the things. Then do discuss why would you like to practice medicine and treat patients in the United States. You can talk about this. Like I mentioned, you talk about why US, because obviously moving to another country is a really big decision and everyone wants to know that why did you do it and what really inspired you to go for that. Then a new thing which I have seen is a lot of people, and especially I think some programs also ask for it. They want the last paragraph cater to the program, that they want to know that why do you want to go to that program or what really inspired you to go to that program and things like that, which you can go ahead and mention. All right. And then the other thing could be the last thing which you obviously have to do is you have to proofread your personal statement. The main thing you need is a well-written personal statement which demonstrates your care, attention to detail, and good English skills and stuff like that. Obviously, like I said, it does not have to be a fancy kind of thing. It has to be just clear, concise, and readable. Last thing is, which I tell everyone, is please be honest, be it on your personal statement, on your CV. Try to be as honest as you can. And some questions which you probably will come to know when you are closer to your application season is, if there are red flags on your application, this is probably the chance to go ahead and explain it. You don't have to go all over crazy. You can avoid the topic if you want, but if you really want to go ahead and talk about it, please go and talk about it in this part. And yeah, one more thing is, please remember, if you're getting 240 in your step 2 CK and you were expecting 245, that is not a red flag. Please don't consider that as a red flag, and don't really even talk about it anywhere. Okay, coming to the don'ts, which is the last part. Don't rush through the writing process. Take your own time. All right, and have enough time for reflection. What I usually tell people is, when you suppose if you're applying in, let's just say, September of 2024, you should somewhat try to start working in the June of 2024 towards your personal statement, so that you can really get things moving and get things sorted out that time. Because when you are working on your personal statement early, you have an early draft. You can talk to your seniors, you can talk to your friends and make them proofread, and you can use whichever service you want to proofread, and that gives you a lot of time to get those things done. Okay, don't really speak negatively about anything or anyone. Please avoid negative comments, especially when you're talking about your home country experience. Please don't put it in a negative way and say that is the reason you're coming to US. I have seen people talk about as random things as this, that the patient load in India was so high that they felt they wanted to be in a relaxed environment, so they came to the US. Like, come on, man, don't write all that stuff. Yeah, that's all I think is there. Avoid talking about religion and politics in the personal statement. I think these are not really like the best topics to talk about. Again, don't list your accomplishments. Let your CV detail your accomplishments. What really is the personal statement is all about you. It's a personal experience. Just make it that way. And the last thing is, please don't plagiarize your personal statement. Avoid copying your senior's personal statement. Avoid copying from the sample personal statements online. Just you can obviously take ideas, but I always suggest that don't really go ahead and copy verbatim and stuff like that. All right. Okay, I think that's all I have for personal statement. Obviously, it was a shorter discussion because right now a lot of people want to focus on their CV because that requires building, whereas personal statement is something which is done over like 3 to 4 months. So that's all I have for you guys.
If anybody has any further questions, they can go ahead and ask right now. We are short of time, so we'll keep the windows less, maybe 30 to 40 seconds. If you have any other questions, please go ahead.
This may be a little irrelevant to the session effort, but could you give a timeline on your US match journey if it's
My
possible?
timeline? Okay. Yeah. So I think my timeline was kind of crazy because I was never sure of USMLE. It was actually in the end of internship where someone just brought up this idea of USMLE to me, and I was like, let's just give it a try. But then I was going to finish my internship in, I think, in March of 2020. So somewhere in Feb 2020, someone just told me that why don't you give a shot to USMLE and see if you want to do it. So that's when I started looking into it. I looked into electives and stuff. I heard about the thing that, oh, you have to leave your internship for some time. You have to extend it to get electives. I did try to do all that stuff, but unfortunately, COVID came out and 6 months just went by like that. And that's when I took my step one. After that, I think I took another 6 months or 7 months for my step 2 CK. The reason I took this much time was because I think with every exam, someone in my family fell sick, be it because of COVID or whatever happened. So I was spending more time inside a hospital rather than studying, which was kind of strange and which is still happening around me. So I kind of took like let's just say 6 to 7 months for each exam, and then I went to the US for 5 months, and the entire process was, I think, over 2 years, somewhere around 2 years. I remember I got 6 months late because I personally contacted COVID and was not really able to do much about it for a couple of months. So that's when my timeline got delayed. Like I applied, I think, a year later. So overall, I would say if you are someone who is an early starter, like if you're done with your step one before internship, or if you're someone who finishes your step 1 in internship, at least a year after this internship, you should be able to apply. That should be the plan. I kind of took a
Thank you,
longer
Doctor.
time because I was not really sure about the journey. But I think now everyone is not really sure about the journey because that's how things are going on. Everything is everywhere. People with 260s are not getting sufficient interviews. People with lower scores and more experience are getting interviews. So it's all over the place. But obviously, if you really want to train in the US, if you want to be here, this is your shot. That's all we can say.
Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chaudhary. That was an amazing session. It was your insight into everything, all the doubts you cleared. It was really amazing. Thank you so much. And I'm
You're
sure we all have learned a lot.
all right.
So,
Thank you so
move,
much.
so moving ahead, certificates of attendance will be emailed within 3 weeks to those who fill the feedback form in the Zoom chat box. A link has been shared in the Zoom chat box, which contains the application forms of all opportunities offered by MSN and GNA that could help build your CV and skills. You can now either register as a MSN or GNA member for the year of 2023 or for lifetime premium membership via the Google Forms shared in the chat box. I will leave the meeting on for another 5 minutes so everyone can access the feedback forms in the chat box. Have a great weekend ahead. Thank you so much.